This is the Spirit and Wellness Show. News and information from a higher perspective. With your host, Harry Wilkinson.
Yes, hello, this is your host, Harry Wilkinson, and welcome once again to the Spirit and Wellness Show 2015. Brand new year. We've been away for a while. Lots to talk about. Lots of things happened, but if you're tuning in for the first time, this is a show where we take a look at the days and weeks events, happenings in the world of politics, technology, health, wellness, all of these things, entertainment, and we take a look at it from a higher perspective, a spiritual perspective, if you will. If you don't like the S word, you can just think of it as taking a step back and maybe putting things in perspective a little bit. We live in this sort of overabundant time where, we are bombarded with all kinds of images and thoughts and news programming and knowledge, awareness. I mean, this is the first time in human history, quite frankly, where we have instant access to anything that is going on pretty much anywhere in the world. Now, of course, there are still things that, we don't know about that still fly under the radar, but in terms of just simply the amount of things we are instantly aware of, I mean, obviously in the past 10 to 15 years, that's dramatically increased with all of the technology advancements we've achieved in the digital age. And so that can change your perspective. It can also, be a little overwhelming. And this is a way to deal with the stories we are creating at a level in which we can not feel overwhelmed and not feel stressed, but understand that we are creating these stories that are essentially illusions, stories we tell about ourselves. They're, in a way, holograms, games we're playing to experience that which we are not and to reawaken or reconnect with who and what we really are, which my contention on that is that we are one, with a capital O. That we are one, but we are also two. In other words, the essence of everyone and anyone is the same. It is oneness. It is, we are all connected. We are all divine mind is a term I like to use. Some people don't like that, but I kind of like that idea, the concept that we are at a higher level, a metaphysical level, all creating this. So, and what I mean when I say we are two, is that we are essentially, as beings, two different beings. We are the everyday being, if you will, the corporeal being, I guess, for lack of a better word, the mundane being. That's your physical existence. You're going through every day. Your work life, your home life, all of those things. Your socialization, your part in the society. That is you on the mundane or everyday level. And then there is big you, expanded you, the metaphysical you, that is creating it all. And learning how these two yous work together part of what we do every day, or should be in any case. So when we look at these stories, and we're going to talk about a lot of these stories, we're going to talk about some of the top stories from 2014 and review some of those. We're going to talk about the things that have been happening since we've been off the air. We've been away for Christmas break for 2 weeks. So during those 2 weeks, an awful lot of stuff happened, which doesn't usually happen around this time of year. So we have some catching up to do. But we're going to talk about one of those top stories were, and maybe what you think or thought the top stories were, and what was most important to you. Often when we do these top story things, people always seem to gravitate towards. And I'm not sure why. I often wonder if it is a natural tendency for us to just gravitate towards those things that seem like the worst. I'm not exactly sure, but a lot of times when people put together these lists, they're the list of the worst things that happened during the year, but that's not what our list is going to be. There'll be some things that were, difficult, perhaps, or perceived as difficult. Once you take that step back that I'm talking about, and, in looking at these things from a spiritual perspective, you stop judging on rightness, goodness, or badness. But as I say, you look at it as something that we're creating and participating in, and what it may be saying and what story we're telling. So we're going to look at the top stories from that perspective. We're also going to take a look at some of the spiritual resolutions you might consider making for 2015. 4, in fact. This article has 4. I can think of a few more, but I really like this article, which is Steve Bancar's article from his Spirit, Science, and Metaphysics website. So we'll talk about that. And we'll talk about hacking, which has become a big, big issue. And we'll talk about ways to meditate more effectively if we have time. If we have time to get to that. So, but first I want to talk about these stories that we've been, or that have been going on since we've been on break. One of the biggest ones is the hacking incident that happened to Sony Pictures. And this happened, it began, I guess, at the beginning of December, when it was discovered that there had been a major hack into the computers of Sony Pictures. And this hack revealed emails that were supposed to be confidential. That kind of put out there what was considered to be confidential. So there was considerable embarrassment from Sony, in that a lot of the discussions that they had with writers and directors and actors were leaked, and a lot of things that were said that weren't intended for the general public came out there. But then it all ramped up when it was determined that the release of a particular movie called The Interview, which had raised the hackles of North Korea, may have been behind this hack, and that threats were made that if this movie were released, theaters that were showing the movie would be targeted. And so it became a very big deal because, in essence, it shut down the release of the movie. So Sony Pictures decided not to release the movie. And the reason they did that was because the theaters were concerned The theaters were concerned that there might be an incident, and even if there wasn't an incident, that the public would perceive it as not safe to go to their theaters. And that would affect their bottom line dramatically. So most of the major theater chains said they would not run the film. And once that happens, well, Sony had no choice. Because if you don't have a platform upon which to distribute your film, you can't really distribute it. But then, and this thing just escalated, where the president got involved, saying that, that Sony should not have backed down, that freedom of speech is very important in this country, and no country's hacking of our databases should inhibit our freedom of speech. It became a big freedom of speech issue. So Sony then found a way to release the film. Interestingly enough, in the process, they really shed light on new distribution models for movies. They're not completely new. Independent films have been doing this for a while, as a matter of fact, where a film will come out, limited release in theaters, but also be available on what they call on-demand digital platforms, where you can watch the film essentially at home, rather than releasing it wide in the theaters, which is what they usually do, and then pulling it from the theaters and making it available on cable or DVD or on demand or what have you. That's the traditional model. And since that model wasn't going to work, they went with a different model. Very interesting way that we are getting our films these days. But as I said, it's not new. I can think of a movie just this summer called Snowpiercer that was released basically that way. We're going to see more of these things happen, where films are released as IMAX films in IMAX theaters only. And so you'll have the option to go see these films as IMAX films if you want to, and if you're not interested in IMAX or 3D, then you can access it at home. So this is changing the way that, just like everything else is changing through our media, it's changing the way that we watch films. But I digress, because I want to get back to this hacking thing. So it was believed that North Korea was behind the hack attack, and so sanctions have now been placed on North Korea for doing this. The North Koreans were, I believe, rightfully upset about this movie. What they did was not helpful. Attacking is never a good idea. Attacking is never justified, and we'll talk about attack too. But pardon me. The movie is a silly kind of comedy, but really basically making fun of their leader, and basically making a joke out of murdering him. And while we have a sense of humor of this sort of thing, we also need to understand that, and not be surprised that the North Koreans would not, and would be very upset about that. Now, obviously, North Korea and the United States aren't on the friendliest of terms. Still, one wonders, why one would want to do such a thing. But that's a different discussion for a different day. So the thing about the Sony attacks, though, the Sony hacks, is that there's some evidence that suggests that North Korea possibly was involved in it. But just about every person I've heard talk about this, who does this for a living, in technology, and is aware of how hacks work, don't believe that the North Koreans could have pulled this one off, simply because they just don't have the ability or the technology. something that underscored that was the fact that I guess it was last week, for a brief time, the entire internet in North Korea went down. And of course, the first thing everyone jumped to was that the United States was behind it, and the United States didn't say anything, yay or nay about it. So there may be some of that in there. But the fact of the matter is, their internet is so simplistic compared to others that experts were saying that a teenager with really good computer skills could knock out all of North Korea's internet. So there's real big questions about whether North Korea actually did this, and why are we now trying to punish them for something that we don't have conclusive evidence they did. It's more a situation where the president probably needs, or politically, people need to be seen, the United States needs to be seen as taking action so that nobody else gets the idea that they can come in here and hack places. So let's talk about this hacking, because what does hacking mean? Well, obviously, if you've been listening to the stories, it's a computer term in which someone from the outside, someone who isn't supposed to have access to your computer data, is able to break into it. So it is a form of attack, and it is a form of, I guess, a criminal behavior in a way, but not always. Hacking has positive uses too. Just for instance, a story that came out, on New Year's Eve, where they're having trouble with the Mars rover Opportunity, which has been exploring the red planet, and it's been up there for about 10 years, but the computer is suffering from memory problems. So it's starting to have some computer breakdown, apparently. I don't want to get too far into the details, but long story short, the computer is having memory problems, which makes it, not function properly. And they think it's because the hardware is getting old. So NASA team is going to hack into the rover software and rewrite and change part of its software so that it can work around the faulty parts and operate more effectively. So there are positive uses of hacking as well, but hacking is now being looked at as a form of warfare, and just like any kind of warfare, you never know what the consequences will be, and it can get radically and rapidly out of hand. So I look at hacking from the same perspective that I look at, in a way that I look at when we were talking about the NSA leaks and all of the information that our U.S. citizens were not aware was being handed over to the government. And I look at it the same way. It is a form of attack, and any kind of attack is an attack upon oneself. So, the way we look at it via Course in Miracles, attacking yourself is an illusion. You can't really do it. You can believe that you are doing that, and you can create situations that are very convincing and look like you are, accomplishing something via your attack. But the truth of who and what we are is far beyond the ability to attack. So there's that aspect of it. And when we attack ourselves, we are believing in illusions. We are believing in separations. We are believing that out there, whether it's North Korea or that guy in the office that keeps looking at you weird, or the person in your life or the family member in your life that is really challenging to deal with, when we're looking at them as separate, as something that needs to, be changed or taught a lesson or what have you, we're dealing with a whole lot of illusion, and we're basically only attacking ourselves, and any attack on ourselves only ends up having repercussions for ourselves. So there's that aspect of it, as I said. The other aspect of it is because we live in this world of increasing technology where pretty much anything you do is known. It's interesting to think about from the perspective of what would you do if you knew everybody could see you, everybody would know what you were doing? How would you live if you knew that everything you thought, every word you said, every idea that you had would be known to everybody, would be out there? How would that affect your behavior? Would it stifle your behavior? Would it freak you out? Would it make you more honest? It's an interesting challenge. It's an interesting challenge because maybe the truth of it is there are no hidden thoughts, as the Course in Miracles says. And maybe that's becoming very materialistically evident now, that there are really no hidden thoughts, that our thoughts create everything that's going on around us. And so that's there for everyone to see. Okay, we're getting into real heavy metaphysical territory, so I wanted to start our first show of the new year a little bit lighter than that. So, but just those are the things that, and I've mentioned it on the show before, but those are the kinds of things that we talk about, or that these kinds of stories, I think, bring to us, that we are exploring and discovering as beings who are pretending to be that which they are not. So, okay, let me move on here because we're running a little short on time. So we want to talk about the 2014 top stories. And, I think that for me, maybe the most interesting story was really what happened within within the context of what we've been talking about for quite some time, which is the period of time we're going through from 2012 to this year, 2015. And I've talked about planetary alignments, Pluto and Uranus, and how this is a period of cultural unrest. And I think all of these stories show examples of that around the world. There was, of course, here in the United States, the incidents that happened in Ferguson, which have led to a string of revelations about the over-authority, the over-militarization of the police departments, the relationships between ordinary citizens, African-American citizens, and the police department that is supposed to be protecting and serving them. and there's been a huge focus, in a way that there hasn't been for quite some times, and a real social movement that has emerged from that, which is similar to social movements that are going on around the world, asking for, or not just asking, but demanding for fairness, freedom, change, to be let loose from suppressive forces. Let's just look at it that way. So we've seen a lot of that, and as I said, we'll continue to see these things evolve throughout until about middle of this year, where I think by that time, or by the end of 2015, by this time next year, we're going to be in a space which is remarkably different in terms of the world and how we get along and what's going on. I really do believe that. But I found the story of Flight 370. That's the Malaysian Airlines jetliner that vanished, and by the way, still has not been found. I found that to be very interesting, because it brought up a lot of issues about how we feel like we know everything. We had all of these experts saying, "Oh, we'll just have to fly the flight recorder, and clearly this has happened and that has happened," and all of the experts have been completely wrong, because nobody could find this flight. And it, to me, set an awareness of how much, and I understand that for the families of the people involved, it's a terrible ordeal, and it is a terrible ordeal. But there are often times where there is just not knowing, where there is mystery, and we are very uncomfortable with mystery and not knowing. The idea that this plane could disappear somewhere, the idea that the universe isn't as definable and understandable and knowable as we think it is. I think we need reminders of that from time to time. Now, of course, again, the Flight 370 story, again, there's people involved where it's, sad and tragic, but again, these are, from the spiritual perspective, these are stories that we're telling. This is an illusion, and a great illusion, and a great hologram that was created, that is allowing us to look at these things and wonder where those people and where that plane might be. Now, in the meantime, the Malaysian Airlines have had two other incidents. One was where one of the planes was actually shot down, and another just the other day, another plane went down, and this one was apparently much more easy to find, and they found the bodies. And, another sad incident, but this Flight 370 is still a mystery. So, okay, well, we had the Ukraine and the Russian story, where the Ukrainians are wanting to be more aligned with Europe, and the Russians want to keep Ukraine from doing that. And, of course, Ebola. And we talk quite a bit about the idea of going viral, and how that relates to Ebola, and how things spread in a way, and how what happens in one part of the world now instantly is happening to us. And I think that was also something that was a real big lesson in 2014. And Then there was the Islamic State ordeal, which we're still going through, which showed us that that terrorism is something that's not only not going away, but that we continue to stoke the flames and fires of it, you know. So there is that too, and then the loss of a lot of celebrities. Probably the most affected, the one that affected many people the most was the loss of Robin Williams, and how the state of mind that he was in, the tortured state of mind that he was in, was unseen by a lot of people. And we're going to talk more about that hidden side of people, because at the same time as we're concerned about hacking and everybody knowing who what you're doing, what you're saying, there's a side to us, and particularly certain celebrities like Robin and Bill Cosby, where there's a side that just is so well hidden that people are surprised when they find out the truth of something. So we're going to need to talk about that on next week's show, and I will get more into these. I will get into the 4 spiritual resolutions for 2015, which we're not going to be able to get into today. But just quickly, I'll tell you what they are, so you can think about them and be ready for them when we do the next show next week. So they are: practice lucid dreaming, and that's going to be a great topic for us to talk about, lucid dreaming. Lucid dreaming, if you don't know what that is, it's dreaming and being conscious of dreaming at the same time. So we'll discuss that. The second one is meditate, because we talk about meditation on this show all the time, and that's certainly a great resolution to have. The third one is to spend time in nature. And there's some information here about the health benefits of spending time in nature, so we'll talk about that. And the fourth one is reading books more. So we'll talk about those 4 spiritual resolutions next week. Until then, my friends, have a wonderful start to the new year. As you begin to clear the past and get ready for what's going to be created, what you're going to be creating in 2015. Have a great week.